Welcome to this tutorial series for Field of Glory Empires. The game begins in 310 BCE, 10 years after the death of Alexander the Great. His fragmented empire is tearing apart at the seams in the east, while Rome and Carthage begin their march towards dominance in the west. Field of Glory Empires is the grandest of grand strategy games. You can choose to play as any of over 70 unique factions, from Ireland to India and all points in between. Some empires start the game with a single region and others start as fully fledged empires, each with their own unique set of opportunities and issues. A large part of the strategic choice in the game is in the management of your faction's progress, which is dictated by culture and decadence. There are 3 levels of civilization, from small tribal hordes in the bottom level through to fully fledged empires in the top level. Each level is also split into 5 statuses, from young to mature to glorious through to old and then decadent. The larger and older an empire becomes, the more difficult it is to keep the decadence in check. And if you don't manage your decadence properly, then it is easy to regress and ultimately have your empire tear itself apart in civil war. This will be covered in greater depth in another video. Field of Glory Empires is very definitely a standalone game, but if you also own Field of Glory 2, then you may choose to play specific battles more tactically in that game. We'll cover this integration between the games in another video. Please note that owning Field of Glory 2 is not a prerequisite to play Empires, just an added bonus for gamers who do own both games. Armies in Field of Glory Empires comprise stacks of different types of units, usually with a general leading them. The units are recruited from your regions and provinces and will typically cost money, manpower, metal and equipment. Once recruited, units also have an upkeep that must be paid each turn. The basic types of units are heavy infantry that excels in fighting in formations on the open battlefield, medium infantry that excels at attacking cities, skirmishers which support the infantry and defend cities, and cavalry that help flank and harass fleeing enemies. There are also more specialised units such as elephants and chariots. Naval forces also have a range of different types of ships for combat on the waves. The most important statistics for units are their attack and defence ratings. Combat power is a helpful representation of their relative strength, but isn't used in-game. Hits are the unit's health, and effectiveness represents a unit's morale and readiness. Resting will slowly restore both the hits and effectiveness of injured units. Many units have specific traits and abilities that can have a bearing on how you should use them. For example, Roman legions are heavy infantry that have a bonus for attacking cities but struggle in forests, swamps and mountains. The abilities of the general leading your army can also have a dramatic impact on battle outcomes. Generals are chosen from your leadership pool. The size of the leadership pool is dictated by such things as faction traits, government type, ruler attributes and some buildings. Generals and admirals, if they are leading fleets, have 2 basic statistics: their attack and defence bonuses. These bonuses allow units to roll extra dice during combat and can drastically shift the odds in your favour. Generals can also have traits, both positive and negative, that can impact how their armies perform. Generals can die relatively easily while on campaign through combat, accidents or even old age. If a general dies during a combat round, the results can be disastrous for any subsequent combat rounds. So a good tip is to split your armies in 2 and have a second general march with the smaller army. The general in charge of the largest army will be the one in charge of any battles. Each turn in Field of Glory Empires is played out over a calendar year. It's a WeGo system where each faction plans their moves and the game then plays out the results concurrently. In the course of the year turn, an army could cross multiple regions and conduct multiple battles. Armies generally all move at the same speed, so there is a degree of synchronisation if relying on multiple armies. Some may have different movement ratings though, which means they can move further at the end of the turn. Some terrain, such as crossing rivers, can impact movement, so be careful not to rely too heavily on different armies fighting battles together unless they both start in the same region. Armies can also be given orders to move into a region or to move and then interact with the settlement in a region. Be careful when moving armies that you give the correct orders. If you plan on besieging a settlement, make sure you don't give it an order to move and assault a city. Fleet combat has the same combat mechanics as land battles, and fleets may be led by an admiral. There are 3 basic types of combat ships: heavy, regular, and light. Transports can also take part in battles, and these are armies that have been given a move order to enter a coastal region. Troops automatically alight to troop transports, but are extremely weak in battle. When transporting armies, it is a good idea to move them with a fleet of warships. Ships all move at the same speed over water, so you can synchronise the movement as long as the fleet and transports all start in the same coastal region. Anchorages with enough food stocks can supply fleets in their adjoining sea region. If a unit moves out of supply, it will not suffer adverse effects on the first turn, but will need to be supplied on the following turn. Army and fleet stacks that are out of supply are shown with a tattered banner. Leaving a stack out of supply will lead to a drop in effectiveness, and eventually the units will start to take damage. On land, your armies are supplied either from the region they occupy or neighbouring regions as long as there is excess food available. Armies can also be supplied by ships in a neighbouring coastal region. Ports can only be blockaded if all the harbour entrances are covered by your fleets. Some harbours have multiple entrances. If an army retreats from battle, it may take to the water in transports, so using fleets to help supply and escort your armies can be a good idea. For more detailed information, make sure you check out the in-game help by clicking on the question mark, or reference the comprehensive manual.